Hello, everybody. Welcome to the continuation of wonderful episode that maybe you've just watched, maybe you watched before, and you are sitting there and waiting. When is this special gonna come out? Well, here we are, and it's not just me and Alex. Obviously, it's
No.
wonderful Adam Goldsmith here with us. One more time for Adam. Well, if you missed again for some reason the episode that we did on Friday. We're gonna again go back a little bit back about you. We're gonna name a few things. We're gonna well, Alex mentioned the in the episode list of artists that Adam had privileged chance working with.
Yeah.
Which are
Yeah, lovely bunch. Robbie Williams, I guess the I don't know if you would say that's
would you
the
say that was
biggest
the
one,
biggest
but
one? Or would you consider Glorious the
Well,
Fun?
I think Gloria's probably worldwide. She's huge.
yeah.
I mean, I have to stress that I'm not in Robbie's band. That's
Okay.
no, that's not my gig. I've done a lot of the jazzier end of things
Yeah.
with him
Yeah.
over the years.
Yeah,
Little gigs and things.
we want to get more into that later. I
yeah.
was thinking about.
I wouldn't want to claim it something as my gig, which is
Okay.
Fair. Well, in addition to Glorious the Fun, Robbie Williams, Anastasia as
Anastasia, yeah.
well, right? Many TV shows and
Yeah.
programs such
Yeah.
as The Voice, lots of West End shows, and for our non-UK viewers, West End is. Would you say that's just the Broadway
it's
of
like Broadway, but better.
Broadway, but better? Ooh, let's start the beef. Here we go, and obviously, one of the things that Adam is really well known, especially among musicians, is his film work.
Session, yeah.
Session film work.
Studio recordings.
Well, there's as I like to say, the rumor on the street that Adam is basically lives at Abbey Road Studios, which is based on his Instagram, is true.
I'd like everybody else. I only put the cool things on
Okay.
Instagram.
Well, if I was there every day, I remember one story that you posted when you just pulled there with like 30 guitars, 15 amps, or something like that.
Well, that does happen. Yeah. I mean, you have to. Yeah.
And Adam is very modest, and he's actually not saying to the. And I'm pretty sure there are many other great gigs and actual names that he can drop. Hopefully, we can pull some out of him in this conversation. But he's a very He's too nice for all of us guys. But he's not even going into that. But what I probably would want to ask first or start with. Which is a very generic question, but you're a guitarist, you're an incredible guitarist, and just tell us how did you end up picking it up and turning it into your career? What made you decide to do so?
The thing that I notice these days is that careers seem to be a decision. So when I was younger, there wasn't an equivalent of. There wasn't like the pop music colleges didn't really exist. So you could only just do jazz. You could do jazz at the Guildhall or the Royal Academy, or you could do classical degrees at various music colleges. So, and also you've got to remember there was no internet. So there wasn't this sort of culture of so much of wanting to be a professional musician. There's a lot of people that want to do that now. And there weren't then. It was just... I remember watching a lot of the TV shows when I was young, like people just used to watch TV and it wasn't on-demand TV. You just had to wait for like 7:30 for the whatever it was. It seems a bit archaic now. But a lot of the shows, a lot of the British TV shows had bands in them. And I was just used to see them and go, those guys look like they know something that no one else does. They look like they're in a little club, a cool little club.
Know something that nobody else does.
Yeah, I was just like, I want to be part of that club.
Okay.
And so that's what I wanted to do, being that like it wasn't necessarily even I mean I loved music, but there was like a mystique about I guess what you'd call it slightly disparagingly light entertainment, like Saturday night TV and all those kind of TV bands, and I had a thing about it, and then later on I started doing it, and I started to get to work with all the people that I'd watched on TV. They're not household names, but in the music business they were they were legendary, so So there was that, but how did I get started? Started was both my parents are musicians or not professionals, and my mum sent me to classical piano lessons when I was 7. And then I was rubbish at it. I couldn't be bothered to practice. It was boring. And then I remember discovering on my dad's bass amp, he had a switch that said distortion. Right. Okay. So I couldn't play at all, but I'd heard Queen, and I was like, what's that noise? And I pressed this button that said distortion, and I was like, it was like a light bulb moment. I was like, that's the noise. That's the noise that I think is so amazing. I really want to. I want to be able to make. I didn't even know what it was. I was so young, like distorted guitar. I was like, that's it.
Yeah.
What is that noise? So I tried to replicate it, basically. And then one thing and another, and then here we are, basically. The music education and guitar lessons and all the stuff that people do normally.
Well, you already mentioned how music education was back then, and
yeah, it's very different. It's very different.
Obviously, we've named some things that you do. I do know that you went to do a classical degree. So,
I did, yeah.
Which is, if you look at it on paper, someone who ended up working with someone like Robbie Williams, even though in a jazz setting, still, how did the transition from the classical degree happen? Apart from you liking Queen and
there was
distortion.
Yeah, there was a jazz stream in the classical course.
Okay.
So I did a bit of jazz, and I was in the National Youth Jazz Orchestra. But a lot of the big artists that I've worked with, like I did a tour with Seal as well, which actually used to be
Another big artist for you guys?
Which used to be Michael Landau's gig, funnily enough. We were talking about him before.
Yeah.
I think I've got that right.
Yeah, back in the episode, yeah.
Yeah. And that was when he went a bit more into jazz. So, and Gloria Estefan had to go at the jazz stuff. She did an album called Standards. So, and my first gig out of college was Pop Idol, which I don't know, you guys probably weren't even
Pop
born,
Idol.
right?
Yeah,
It's like the British version of American Idol or something like that.
It came before American Idol.
Even before
that.
okay.
we
That
were
I didn't
we
know.
were the OGs. So,
Well, to be fair, if you look at it, isn't the Simon Cowell like producer of all of those things?
yeah, it was. There was another
least
Simon whose
majority.
name now I can't remember. Simon. Oh, God, what was his name? Famous pop producer, like TV pop producer. Anyway, not that it matters. But so that was my first gig out of college was Pop Idol, and they had a big band, and it was after Robbie Williams had released his first the Swing Menu Winning, the big jazz album that he did, and then Pop Idol followed it, and they basically employed the National Youth Jazz Orchestra plus or minus a few things, and called us the Big Blue. We were called the Big Blue, and it was great there because we made an album. We did an arena tour. I remember playing the intro to Enter Sandman at Wembley when I was about 22, like in the sound check, which was like still one of the highlights.
Insane.
Yeah, it's so good. And that had jazz. So jazz has been at the root of playing with a lot of pop artists, to be honest. And my main sort of pop, one of the only live gigs that I really do now is Beverly Knight, who's a UK soul singer, and who is one of the best things ever. I absolutely adore her. She's amazing. But that's got, it's pop, but it's got jazz influences. There's some changes going on there. There's some the odd gospel kind of changes and things that happen. Jazz has really informed all the pop stuff. I've never done any sort of really bubblegum pop things. I played on a Little Mix album. That's the closest I've got to it, but not like full, like kind of Kylie sort of pop.
Okay, fair.
Yeah, no, nowadays, like with the live, even though on the record, it also is, I guess, what you maybe would call bubblegum pop, like very, very pop. Still, you have these MDs and arrangers who does the live shows. Like, for example, Bruno Mars. Well, I guess he's already kind of has a bit of that.
He's pretty
I don't know.
muso,
Yeah, he's actually maybe not the best name to put out, but many of these pop shows have MDs and all those who bring that kind of influence into the live arrangements. So like on a live basis, they do a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really hip.
And like talking about MD, because well, correct me if I'm wrong. You have mentioned before that for Robbie, one of the Robbie gigs, you did some MDing for a little run there.
I mean, again, I hesitate to add. There's two guitar players, Tom and Gary, who've been with Robbie for a long time, so I hesitate to claim something that isn't mine. But what happened was, I think the regular band, I'd done some little jazz projects with Robbie, and basically the rest of the let me get this right. What happened? The rest of the regular band were in LA rehearsing for something, and Robbie needed to do not an album launch, a film launch. His film Better Man at Cannes Film Festival.
Yeah.
And so his management phoned me and said, "Can you put a band together and be the MD for that?" It was the first time I've MD'd anything.
Right, right.
And it's probably the last time I would as well. But no wish to be an MD, but I loved it. But it was quite 0 to 60, like having never been an MD, MDing Robbie Williams, and then not being an MD again. So
right.
like, the graph looks quite entertaining. But
then you should put it on your website.
So I did. I did the charts, got the band together.
Yeah.
Organised that, and we did maybe 4 gigs or something with me as MD. But essentially, all I did was what I'd learned a lot of various people over the years. I outsourced everything.
Right.
So I answered a lot of emails. I got a friend of mine, Dave, to do the charts, so they were really well done. I got some amazing musicians. So there's good friends of mine. So Steve Pearce on bass, Neil Wilkinson on drums, and Pete Murray on piano. And when you've got those guys, like, I was pretty nervous because ultimately the responsibility does come down to you. And Robbie especially then, he didn't really know me at all. I've done maybe 5 gigs with him, and he the band are in one place, and then he comes on and you're on stage and you play the gig and then you go. You know? But it was fine because all the musicians were so brilliant that they just did their jobs. So it worked. It worked fine, and I got a nice email saying everyone was very happy. So it was good. It was good. Yeah,
nice.
Yeah.
Lovely.
But it is a smaller jazz project basically compared to it's not the big stadium rock and roll show.
Yeah. So how did you for the like the arranging of the tunes? Then did you do a lot? And what was your approach? Like, did you have a guitar, mainly a guitar approach to it?
So a lot of we did cut downs of a lot of his big band things. So a lot of the horn lines weren't played by horn players, although later on I did some extra gigs where we did have horns and strings, and I got the strings and the horn arrangements done as well for those. So, but for the just rhythm section stuff, we did that thing that George Shearing does, where you'd have piano and guitar
doing
that nice sort of like Wes Montgomery kind of octaves thing, playing the horn lines and things. So they were cut down big band arrangements for the most part.
Okay,
which pretty much worked. I didn't get any letters of complaint, and the film went well. So
I still haven't watched it. Have you watched it?
Success? No, I haven't watched it yet. No, actually.
I remember we were playing a gig in Norway. I was invited to the festival there, and Aleks, because he's in my band, we were playing the gig, and there was a movie theater, and there was a poster of that film, and we were standing there, like me, I think it was Aleks and Kai, because that Kai is also part of the band.
Oh right, great, yeah, he's great,
yeah. So we're standing there and we're looking at the credits, and it was funny that I was like Robbie Williams is like closer to the bottom of the list for some reason,
right? I was nothing to do with the film.
Yeah. And then it was like
the launch thing. So
I was like, yeah, even if they put Adam, probably not even here at all. If Robbie Williams at the bottom.
No. I don't want to claim things which aren't anything to do with me. So I didn't play the film. I just.
But speaking of the launch, you mentioned that you were nervous because new thing, being an MD, and for those who don't necessarily know, MD stands for musical director. It's basically a person. We're a team these days is that is responsible for pretty much everything live performance related, all the way from from actually putting together the band to how the stage looks and whether all the equipment is there. But you mentioned that you were nervous, and you've played crazy gigs in your life. 2022 Wembley, playing the Enter Sandman intro. How do you go about throughout your life? What have you noticed? What would you suggest or recommend for those who maybe have some kind of a stage fright or not fully comfortable or confident within themselves or they're playing on stage?
I think that's a very good question, and something which isn't just applicable to the music business. You can talk about it in many walks of life, I think. But for that gig, I don't think that nerves is. I've probably used the wrong word. I think I was more excited because I'd done so much prep for it. Right. The charts were nailed on. the guys knew exactly what they're doing. I'd answered every email. I'd gone through everything. I did so much prep because I didn't want to get it wrong. That it was probably more just excited than, but there was a bit of nerves. But in terms of like a stage fright thing, like we'll move on from that gig and like maybe talk about recording or something. Like a lot of people get this thing. Somebody presses record,
Yeah.
and they crumble.
Struggle.
Yeah, I've seen
big
those
time with
guitars.
that.
Yeah. So for whatever reason, the opposite thing happens to me. I don't know why. It's just complete luck. Like if I'm not under pressure, I'm a terrible guitar player. Like I make all sorts of mistakes. Like I do a West End show called Starlight Express. I'm in the orchestra for that is like my day job basically, and I make mistakes all the time because I'm not. There's no pressure because we do it every day.
Yeah.
It's like spang, bang, bang, like it's like sounds like someone throwing saucepans around all the time. It's awful. So, but if I'm under loads of pressure, I get better, and it's just an accident. So. And I think that's not a very helpful thing to say for anybody who's learning because it's just it's a complete accident.
Well, at the same time, it can be an exercise. Try to put yourself in some kind of pressure and see if you can work yourself to getting used to it at least.
Yeah, I think you have to get used to it. But I like adrenaline. I feel very comfortable being on edge, if that makes any sense. I like all the fight or flight chemicals because it focuses you and you're completely in the moment. Like if you're doing I was doing a film last week for a big composer called Alan Silvestri, and he's like, like it's pretty,
it is huge.
It's a really big composer.
Huge,
yeah. So we're in Air Studios. There's a full orchestra. There is a big band and a rhythm section. So it's a huge thing. And there was I didn't play much all day, and then there was one bit which is just basically acoustic guitar on its own. So, which is actually quite difficult because you go from doing nothing for hours, but still listening, and then all of a sudden you've got to play, and it started, like a very quiet high G, and then some pretty little triplets on acoustic guitar. And it's like. That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
And I remember I had a look at the music. We actually got sent the music the day before. And I had a quick scan through the day before. And I looked at it and went, yeah, I can play that. And I tried it. And I was like, oh, God, this is hard. Oh, God, I sound terrible. It's all wrong. I'm useless. And then the opposite thing happened in the studio. I played it. And for some reason, because of the concentration, it just sounded fine. But the thing is, in terms of advice, that's not very helpful because I haven't done anything to deserve that. It just sort of, it's a kind of a thing that, I relate to being uncomfortable.
I absolutely relate to that.
Okay, cool.
I know what he's talking, especially like I said it many times. I am my best in all possible ways when I'm like on stage.
Right.
Especially bigger the stage, more stakes, the higher the stakes, the better I am.
Right.
But one thing that I've always like, because everyone's like asking the same question.
Yeah.
My response, and I think like something that viewers can get out of yours is, it's inevitable that the adrenaline and the pressure is going to be there. Just get used to that and train yourself to work around that or to your fullest potential when in that setting, rather than it's not just the stage, what the stage represents, in my opinion, that people are afraid of.
I think a lot of it, actually, I mean, this might sound like a kind of psychobabble, and I apologize if this comes across really not, just strange. I think it might be like childhood things as well, like in terms of, and I'll tell you why I say that, because my childhood was very, I'm not using it as a therapist, like quite anxiety filled. There was a lot of family, a lot of strange stuff that happened, and and I think I lived a lot of my early life in an anxiety filled situation. So I'm comfortable in those situations. I go wrong if I go on holiday. So if I go on holiday and I've got nothing to do, I'm like, what? I can't deal with it. But if you put me under massive amounts of pressure in a recording studio, I'm like, yeah, all right, what?
Very interesting.
So I think it's just because I'm fucked up.
There you go.
That's the answer.
well,
do you have to cut out swearing? Well,
that's fine.
No.
But since you already mentioned the movies, I'm a huge fan of films and scores.
Yeah.
Aleks, as I discovered midway our friendship, he's also doing that and likes that. It's something that, obviously, as you said in the podcast, London being basically the capital of that
Yeah,
work,
it is. Yeah.
which helps. But something that you don't really think about, how do you get into who led you to doing these gigs on a regular basis? And it's an interesting job if you think about it, where you get to hang out with great musicians, sometimes big composers. And I've had one-time privilege of being present on one of the big film scores.
Yeah.
And I know how that thing is, how it's looking from inside.
Yes.
And if you think about it's a dream job, yes, a lot of pressure, but how do you get there? Like what?
The thing is, although those kind of questions are they're difficult to answer because everyone's got a different story. Because I think with the music business, like I always say this in teaching, is like, if you go and do a law degree, you do your degree and then you apply for a job and you're a trainee solicitor, and then whatever the progression is, you know what I mean? Like there is a set
there's
progression.
always there's
But
a
with
path,
music,
pathway.
Yeah, exactly. There's a pathway. The music, it's just a series of coincidences. So I
Yeah.
can tell you how I did it. Like I remember somebody called me when I was 22 or something to do a show at Edinburgh Festival for 300 quid a week, right? Which I was like, what? I didn't care. I was like, well, however, I was 21, 22. I was like, I don't care, don't care about the money. I'm just going to go and get drunk and hang out and watch comedy. Like,
You're
I'm gonna
such
live-
different, Adam. Me and you are such different 22-year-olds. As it turns out.
I didn't care. I didn't really thought about what I wanted to do for a job. I was like, I'm going to play guitar or whatever. So I went to Edinburgh for a month. Anyway, so the musical supervisor on this show was a show called Jerry Springer the Opera, if you can believe such a thing exists, which actually did quite well. It was then at the National Theatre. And anyway, so it did quite well. The supervisor on that was a guy called Martin Koch. He did all the arrangements for Mamma Mia, the musical.
Right.
He's a very talented bloke and really lovely. Anyway, so he used a certain fixer who was fixers like an agent for musicians. And it happened that she is the fixer for a lot of the films. So I sort of, and she's, she's considered the gold standard of kind of fixers, really. And so I ended up kind of working for her a little bit, and then gradually doing the odd gig here and there, and then here we are. After a few years, you eventually people trust you. It takes a while because
Yeah, of course.
you start working first of all when people ask for you, and then all of a sudden if somebody asks for a guitar player and they don't know anybody, they might say, "Well, why don't you try?" There's other people that do it as well, but
Yeah, of course.
I've been lucky enough to do a few of those kind of things now. And
Just to clarify, are you doing, like, because you already mentioned Fixer, are you doing all this like independently without it, or are you like associated with a certain?
no. Well, it's
An
not like
agent.
actors have an agent.
Yeah,
so
of
you
course.
can-
But at the same time, like,
Well, you
for
do
example,
end
I heard the stories like when some BVs, for example, or some session musicians are actually getting gigs through the agencies, like the touring gigs mostly, but still.
Yeah, I think you end up working for certain people. 9 times out of 10 with the films, there is a contractor. The Americans call them contractors, we call them fixers. It's the same thing. So 9 times out of 10 with a film, because you're dealing with large scale.
Yeah.
You might
Yeah.
be dealing with Disney or Amazon or something. Like this film last week was for Amazon. So
Yeah.
they don't. The head of Amazon doesn't phone you up. You know what I mean? They phone up a big organization.
Yeah.
And the organization phones you. The contractor phones you. And there's maybe a couple of contractors in London that, two or three, maybe, like one in particular that really is responsible for most of that stuff. And they're super pro. But the thing is, you can't get it wrong. So that pressure is there, I've forgotten what question I'm supposed to be answering. I'm just rambling now. aren't
I
I?
asked you about
Yeah.
actually whether you're working with a certain fixer. or
Yeah,
not,
I mean,
but, like,
you're not. It's not like
It's not like an agent,
It's
but
not like an
yeah.
agent where you're tied to one person. You can work for
Yeah.
whoever calls you.
because I assume it's on a freelance base, anyways.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Kind of, yeah.
So they don't. You like an agent, an actor's agent might take, or a sports agent might take whatever
Contract the
percentage.
percentage. Yeah.
That doesn't work like that. I think, as far as I understand it, they charge their fee to
Yeah, of course. To put it
organise the
together.
orchestra,
Yeah.
and the musicians get their
Right.
their fee as a separate thing. So I think it works. So you're not tied to one agent, fixer, contractor, what you want to
Fair.
call them. You can work for as many people as you want. And by the same token, like I worked for a guy called Segun Akinola, who he was the last Doctor Who composer. So I've played on almost all the Doctor Who's for about 15 years now.
Here you go.
I mean,
That's where you can
probably-
hear Adam.
Probably long. Yeah, most. I would I'm pretty sure most of the guitars have been me for quite a long time, since Murray Gold. But Sagan phones me. Can we get on? So he sort of phones me and says, "Will you do this?" So I don't get called through the fixer for that.
Right. Okay, fair.
This
So-
is a nice guy, you know. Like, so it's whereas, you know, not everyone. Some people are more arm's length.
Right. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. So just a good mix of people that
Yeah.
they come to you. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the best advice that I could find to give was just keep saying yes.
Yeah.
Just say yes to stuff when you're younger. Don't turn things down because it's not my kind of music, or you don't play that. So I remember, like, the first time I got called for mandolin sessions, it's like, "Hi, is that Adam?" Like, yeah, it's like, "Yeah, I got a session for you. Oh, by the way, there's 8 bars of mandolin. You do play mandolin, don't you?" Yes. Lie. Go out, buy a mandolin, buy How to Play Mandolin for Dummies or whatever. Learn the mandolin.
Is that the one you were telling us today?
No, that's
Is
a
a different
that's
one.
No, this was a long time ago, and I did actually learn how to play. So, like, you can't say no to stuff. Same with banjo, all that kind of stuff. You
Yeah.
play banjo? Yep, damn right I do now.
Oh wow. Oh wow.
Now that we're still sitting in the world of movies,
Mhm.
cinema, work in studio, we're gonna continue. But I think, like, now that we're kind of established in this place, what would you? It's not necessarily for guitars, maybe even more for guitars. What would you say things you would suggest to someone who's starting up in recording? Doesn't have to be for movies, anything. Work in the studio. What are the things, something to be aware of, something to be ready for, something to always have in your back pocket, as in just as a backup plan or whatever, when it comes to attitude in the studio, work ethic in the studio, preparation?
I think there's all the obvious things that apply to all gigs. Like, be nice. Like, try to be nice, you know. Turn up on time. It's all the really obvious. Well, don't turn up on time. Turn up early. I mean, I'm there an hour before, checking all my gear works. Have doubles of everything. Make sure everything works in tune.
Yeah, we're gonna go into the gear conversation a bit later. but-
Yeah, you just all the obvious stuff. But I think there's other things, like, and then the technicalities, like, to do the kind of sessions that I do, you have to be, you know, fairly efficient sight reader, which for guitar players strikes fear into our hearts. doesn't
Well,
it?
see, unfortunately, these days, not only guitar players, more
Not
and
only
more,
guitar
more
players,
and
yeah.
more musicians, singers. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's that. So generally, because a lot of the time you're in an orchestra, and those guys are quick, you know, they're serious.
Yeah.
So, and you can't be any slower.
especially
than
here
them.
in London. Especially,
Yeah, our
UK as
string
a whole.
orchestras are they're unbelievable. You see the stuff they do and the way they sound.
Yeah.
And it's the same people every time you go. It's the same people. They are good.
Yeah.
So you can't be the one going, "Oh, sorry, do you mind if we do that again?" Like, it's not
yeah.
going to work, because the first time you do that is the last time you're going to do that. you
Yeah.
know, So, but also I think there's and again, this might sound a bit cheesy, but like, you have to have instant access to a range of emotions as well.
Mm.
So, like, I remember doing, and this sounds super cheesy, but you have to embrace what's going on in the film. I remember doing a love scene in one of the Bridget Jones films, and I could see it was it, but I can't remember which ones. Not the very first one, because I was too young for
It's
that.
the
There's
third
of
one on at least on your website.
Is it?
Yeah, the Bridget Jones baby.
on the IMDb thing. That's
Yeah.
that's not my website. That's
No, it's I looked
Oh,
it
is
up on
it?
your
Oh,
website.
fine.
It
I
says
d-
that
oh,
one.
yeah, I
but
didn't
maybe
do
on
it.
I
Yeah,
need to
fine.
check IMDb
Yeah,
to
yeah,
go
yeah.
more into.
Anyway, but whatever, there was a love scene, and I remember it had a classical guitar bit. And
Yeah.
the thing is, those kind of bits of playing are very simple, just like 2 or 3 notes, really. But you have to be able to match the emotion of whatever's going on. You don't always get to see the film, but you have to be able to do that. And I think that's the thing that people don't talk about enough. Like, you know, because music is, I mean, it's very easy for people to go, "Oh, session musicians, yeah, they're just like emotionless drones who just play what's put in front of them."
Yeah.
It's the opposite of that is true.
It's not only about just like playing the notes, but
No, it's not about that at all. It's about how you're playing on a film, and a film is usually it's the sort of apex of all the different arts coming
Mhm.
together, isn't it?
Yeah,
You've got
yeah.
the visual, the emotional content of films, and you know, you ever tried watching a film without the music? It's like
It sucks.
It's yeah for the yeah. So you have to be able to play like that. So I think that's a really underrated thing. You have to be able, take, so especially with guitar, if you play nylon string guitars, I tell you who's really good at this, a colleague of mine called John Paricelli, who's, he's a bit older than me. So he's never really been on the internet. So he's not like known on the internet, but he's played on loads of things, loads of big films and bits and pieces. But he's just very low profile kind of dude, but he's absolutely amazing. But his acoustic playing is some of the best acoustic playing we've ever heard. And he does that. It's just so beautiful, which is why you want him on a film, because he's got this touch on acoustic guitar,
Yeah, acoustic and classical is just like, I find it so different because it's so much more vulnerable in a way.
Squeaky.
Compared to electric guitar, like I feel like mistakes stand out so much more.
Yeah.
Less forgiving.
You can't make them.
So you were talking about like trying to replicate the emotions. Have you done anything specific to kind of like any practices to kind of tap into the different emotions and how you play different? Is it just like over time you've just kind of
That's a terrible answer, isn't it? No, I haven't. I just like it. That's music, though, isn't it? That's what it's about. Fundamentally, it's about emotion and communication and all those kind of things. That's why we like it. That's why you get into it when you're a kid, because it makes you feel a certain way. So I think to be a successful recording musician, like you have to be able to access that, and you have to be able to get into character quickly as well. If you got like a Rolling Stones thing, you have to be Keith Richards for me.
It says you did the Bohemian Rhapsody on IMDb.
I know I didn't play on it, so I taught the guy who played Brian May. I was like the guitar coach on the film.
Oh,
so which is quite funny actually, because like
That's
remember Live Aid in like '86 or something, when I guess I would have been 9. I remember running around the living room in the badminton racket, pretending to play guitar, pretending to be Brian May. But so I had to work with Gwilym, who was the actor that played Brian May in Bohemian Rhapsody. He used to come around to my house every week, and what we'd do is pretend to be Brian May in the living room.
Wow.
Like that. I was doing exactly the same stuff, getting paid loads of money for it.
Well, that's the gigs to do.
Yeah, it was so funny because we were like literally miming to the Live Aid concert, pretending to be Brian May.
That's
like,
really
a bit in my living room, which is the same thing I'd done when I was
Never
like,
have I
so
ever
young.
thought.
It was so funny.
Never have I thought, especially when watching Bohemian Rhapsody, I'm gonna be sitting with the guy who taught him how to run around the stage.
Yeah, we did it, and I spent a long time trying to analyze Brian's movements and like how his touch creates the sound and how the angle of the pick.
Did you
and
do
all
the
this
infamous the coin thing?
Well, he used the coin. I'm sure he used the coin on the. I wasn't on set. He was just, there was.
No, did you talk about it though?
Yeah, of course. We talked about everything.
That's incredible.
Like ridiculous detail, because actors are way better at practicing than musicians are. Musicians,
especially for these kind of things. I would assume
they do
so,
really go in. You tell them to do something, they do it. You tell a guitar student to do something. There's like a 1 in 800 chance that they're actually going to do any practice. Like usually we don't, do we? Like, the amount of but actors, you say, right, do that, and they have nailed it.
Yeah, they're religiously gonna do it.
They're obsessive, which is amazing. So it was a lot of time you can sort of, you don't really have to. I've done a few of those things. I taught Colin Firth. I only gave him one lesson on the Mamma Mia film. He's one bit where he plays guitar, but he'd already done all the work. I did a few on the Bob Marley film that came out last year.
As in with Timothy?
No.
No, that's Bob Dylan. That's not Bob Marley.
Oh, Bob Marley movie. Oh, I heard wrong.
Yeah,
sorry, my bad.
Yeah. So yeah, I did a few lessons on that. Like, I've done a few of those things over the years, but they are super dedicated.
Right.
You almost don't have to do anything because they just do it.
Yeah, they're like so different. But since you already mentioned like the details and going in depth and analyzing, kind of going a little geeky detour. As a guitarist who, I don't know, you've probably seen it all. The recordings, tours of different scales, performance of different scales. Practically speaking, 5 tips, maybe more, maybe less, 5 things, better say maybe, that, again, more or less, that you have noticed help you to maybe stay in better shape, to keep your instruments in a better shape, that help you cope with the stress of traveling, of touring, of recording, that something that you only get through years, discover through years, what is something that you can maybe now pinpoint on, give out in a way?
Okay, so, well, your body changes with age as well. So I'm almost 48, and I have to look after myself in a way that, I mean, this is not like super old, but at the same time, when I was your guys' age, I was like, you know, doing all sorts, and
Yeah.
it didn't really. You could just get up in the morning and just go straight to, and it was fine. You know,
Yeah.
you know, like, and then you hit 30 and you go, oh, okay, what's going on there? Oh, what's that? Oh, it's called a hangover, right? You know, that's a new one. Didn't used to feel like this. And then your back starts hurting a bit. So these days, like, I'm so boring. Like, I do yoga every day because
That's great.
like what does happen on film sessions, if you're sitting like that watching a conductor, excuse me, you realize that you are incredibly tense. If you do 2 or 3 days like that, I have to go and maybe get a bit of physio and yoga, because I'm just like kind of, you know, if especially with like classical guitar with orchestra and that kind of thing, you know,
Yeah.
it's really,
You gotta
you are
position
so,
yourself. You gotta do.
well, I'm not really a legit classical player. So I don't do that.
They don't have the-
So
they have
it's
the
worse
skill.
position, you know. But you get it's very easy to get very tense. So I have to do that. So I discovered it in COVID when we weren't allowed to leave the house. I did it with my kids. Like, we just did yoga for fun, and I was
Nice.
like, oh, my back feels better.
Mm.
So I do that like every day.
That's great.
I go, you're running. I try to look after myself, you know. There are, you know, ways which you cope with anxiety and stress and things when you're younger, which I wouldn't recommend. You know, various substances or whatever. I think if you can avoid anything when you're young, I would kind of avoid that, you know, because there are sort of short-term fixes to. Well, I used to get it. I wouldn't get anxious before work, and I'd go and do a session. Then afterwards, there's this huge come down. 'Cause
Yeah.
you're rammed full of adrenaline all
Yeah.
day, like live TV and things. And then you go, where am I going to go with this? Right, let's have it. You know. So, and then all the obvious stuff comes out the woodwork, and it's like that doesn't end well, in my experience. So that's not, you have to find a way of coping with that stuff. And I think that like big live performances as well is difficult, because say if you're on tour and if you play at Wembley, right, it's quite a high. It's not normal. It's not within the range of human experience normally.
No.
So you come off. Where do you go with all that? It's an insane place to be.
Yeah, because we like that. That's, I guess, what we all strive for. Being on those big stages, on those that huge crowd and everything. But then, like, you have when you've reached that. Like,
we only see the before. We don't know what's after.
But an even bigger problem is you're not a rock star and you're doing it.
Yeah.
So what happens is, as like a side man, you can do a gig, or the Albert Hall or Wembley, or like one of these big things, or Abbey Road, or one of these places. And for the time when you're there, you are a rock star, right? You know what I mean? In your own little head, right? But as soon as you come off stage, you're just a bloke who's going to Tesco's.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's a very strange place to occupy, because whereas the artist is still a rock star, you're not. So you're back on your EasyJet flight, picking your kids up from school, you know, paying your tax bill, doing all the stuff that everyone else in the world does except for rock stars. And they're off on the private jet, you know, to the Cayman Islands or whatever. I'm exaggerating, but you know what I mean? Like, so that's their life.
Yeah.
I remember being away. I had this conversation with a drummer called Andrew Small. He's a great drummer, and he was Kylie's drummer for a long time. I think he was her MD as well. Anyway, we were away with Anastasia just before COVID, and we were doing like a corporate kind of thing. We were staying in Morocco, and it was the most ridiculous thing. We got a villa each, right? So I had this villa to myself, my own swimming pool. Like, it was it was ridiculous. Like the whole place to myself, it was completely stupid. I just kept FaceTiming my family, going, "Oh, look at this!" It's so silly. And then you come back, and you're back on your EasyJet flight, and then you're picking the kids up from school, and so you've got this weird, like, so you have to remember, and it's also the kind of thing which you can only get through experiencing things like that.
Yeah.
Is that's not your life. That's not you. That is a byproduct of the environment that you're in at that moment. It's not there for your benefit although you are getting the benefit of it. So you've got to avoid like being sucked into that.
Yeah.
You know, like if you're actually in Iron Maiden or you are Anastasia or whatever, you know, that then great, that's your life. Get used to it. But don't think I don't really know what I'm trying to say, but it's just that it can be quite a bizarre juxtaposition of lifestyles, you know. 'Cause you will come back and then, you know, I've just got a flat tire, or like, you know,
Yeah.
the most mundane stuff. I've got to take the dog for a walk. Oh, you know, stepped in the dog, whatever. You know, like, so there is that weird juxtaposition of like you can be on stage, and then you leave the venue, and no one's interested, you know, which is fine. Like I'm happy with that, but it is an odd juxtaposition.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you found any like tools or things you do to kind of? Is it just like an acceptance thing that after a while you just get over it, you get used to it? Yeah. There's nothing like specific you can do to kind of, I don't know, in the beginning maybe to I don't know, cope with it.
Well, yeah, unhealthy things.
Yeah.
So yeah, I did find them.
Right.
And then I found out that was not a very good idea. Certainly not for me anyway. But yeah, these days I just get over it. You know, it's fine. I'm used to it now. But like that, it's a unique thing to the side mat. That dichotomy of just being a jobbing regular person, but being in weird rock star environments. It's a very odd thing. You can see it when good friends of mine, they go on tour with really big artists, and they come back and there's like a re-entry period. You know, it's like, where's catering? Where's my 5-star hotel? Why isn't somebody sent a car for me? And it's like, dude, you drive a Ford Fiesta, go to Tesco's. You know, it's like Walmart, whatever for
America, yeah, go to Walmart
or whatever it is.
Yeah. I mean, during the tour, you're probably going to Trader's Joe, but like.
We don't go anywhere. That's the point. Not everyone does everything for you.
I mean, yeah. To be fair, I was just like the level wise. I mean, but
right. Okay. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the tour that we're here now. You've played different venues from the world famous ones to, and I mean, we've seen you play like a little pub gig.
Oh, they're the best. Yeah.
Yeah. Those are the most fun usually.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
But what I want to ask is again. Everybody, all the musicians. Well, I mean, I'm an artist, right? But still, Aleks is a musician. But we only see the pretty side, which is that moment when you're on stage, thousands and thousands of people in front of you. But one other thing that I feel like a lot of people don't really talk enough about is how tiring the moving is, the traveling is. Because when we did the Norway gig, we were there literally for 2.5, 3 days top. Just one festival, just one performance, not even that far. But it was a busy day traveling still. So now that we're trying to be clean, no substances whatsoever, and you already mentioned yoga. What do you think, or what do you say, or what would you say is something that would you mention as something being really helpful when it comes to resetting your mind, your body to feel fresh, or to try to be as fresh as possible for those gigs? Because the gig is just the 2 hours, maybe a night, but everything else time is like the traveling or whatever.
I just think you get used to it. That's the honest
thing. You just get
do
into
something
that.
enough, you get good at it, or you know you don't, in which case. So, yeah.
And then then you're off the gig. But how like playing wise? Because like I mean, for example, Beverly Nights, right? It's not your straight ahead pop. It's more like soul R&B. So I would assume, like, I've heard some stuff. So, but like I've never seen the live performances. So I assume technically you have to do a bit more than just your 4-course pop stuff. How do you stay in shape when you maybe have very little time to practice, very little time to dedicate yourself to your instrument? Sometimes I heard different stories, but I just want to hear from you what you've been doing throughout the years.
I do warm up these days. I didn't used to warm up. I used to dive into everything. Like, I'm a relatively anxious person, but there's a bit of me which is quite, I hate to use the word tough because that's probably the wrong word, but like pretty single-minded. So if I'm going to do something like that, I will just do it. So I'm trying to think of a good way to answer this. I mean, these days I had a bit of tendonitis last year, so I do warm up. I put the metronome on, and I also do this thing where, like, I play along with, like, Bev's tour last year. We I used to warm up with Megadeth. I used to play along to Rust in Peace, and that
Oh.
really gets your chops together. I had
Yeah.
this little Fender thing, which sorry, geeky,
The
geeky.
small DS
yeah,
amps,
you
yeah,
plug
yeah.
it in there and you
The
put your
practical,
headphones
yeah.
in, and you can play a track from your phone, and you play along with it. So I was just playing along with Rust in Peace. I used to play a few tracks from that every night to warm up, get
Yeah.
everything in shape, do a couple of stretches, whatever, like. But I've just always just bulldozed into things, to be honest.
Would you say
mentally.
that? Would you say that is something you, now that you've been through it, you would have changed if you knew before?
No,
You still go through it.
no,
Like
well,
that?
I wouldn't have changed anything. I've had a great time.
Mhm.
There's a few situations when say if I know in retrospect I've been rude to somebody. I'm only talking about like maybe 2 or 3 times over the past sort of 30 years. I would change those things if I've upset someone.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And usually it's been like some sort of fear-based response, like I've been uncomfortable, so I've done something stupid.
Mhm.
Nothing terrible, but
Okay.
like if I've just been a bit of a, silly sausage.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So I might change those things, but I wouldn't change anything else. I've had a great time.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, it's been
Yeah.
brilliant. I can't do anything else anyway.
I mean,
I'm
yeah,
completely
you would
useless at most
from
of it.
Adam, you wouldn't expect something, a bunch of stories about, oh, I was a douchebag, I would have changed that, this, that, but
There's been a couple of things but where I was thinking, retrospect, I would have gone, oh, why did I say that? Or, but nothing terrible.
and just you don't have to go into details of what
Good,
happened.
I'm not going to.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But have you noticed that over the time, like the conflicts are happening, and especially on an environment like a tour, where you most likely for several months trapped in the same bus, plane, hotels.
Yeah.
Conflict resolution, conflicts in general. Like, if
be-
something were to happen, or what would you do? Or even better, you've seen lots of things. What would you suggest or say best things to do or try to do to prevent those? Because it
It's
does
very
affect
difficult.
playing.
Yeah, it is very difficult. I mean, I've never done a really, really long tour, to be honest. It's only been, a couple of months here or there, whatever. But no, I've never done one of these like 2-year kind of
Okay.
Metallica style, or
Yeah.
like endless things. I don't think that I would want to do that. But the thing is, as you get, I think most of those things, in my experience, although I'm prepared to be wrong, this is just my direct experience, happen when you're younger. Because to be around for a long time, you have to learn how to get on with other people. And if you don't learn how to get on with other people, the music business sort of ejects you. So if you've got somebody who's difficult to be on a tour bus with or something, after a while they stop getting booked because it's like, yeah, they're great at whatever their instrument is, but 90% of a tour is just hanging around
Yeah.
or traveling. So you can't have them on, it's like a. But I have experienced it. Yeah, I've experienced it where, I've been on a tour and people having arguments and stuff, and it really brings such a bad vibe because like if you go into a studio or something and there's somebody's got a problem somewhere, it doesn't really come up. You go home and you reset and then you come back the next day and it's totally different. But on a tour, it's like this. You're just forced together. You
Yeah.
are there all
Yeah.
the time. Whether it's especially on a tour bus. So yeah, it can really. I mean, the only time I've ever experienced it was nothing to do with me. So it wasn't my argument. I've never had an argument with anybody on tour. Not proper thing. Obviously, every so often you get a bit.
Yeah, minor ones, but like
Yeah, but
talking
not-
about the big ones that affect
And
the
it's when
entire
I've seen
thing.
like an ongoing thing. It's been nothing to do with me, but it still affected me. My enjoyment of the whole thing. I was, it didn't. I'm not going to go into details.
Yeah, of
but-
course.
Oh, no.
But I felt like it dragged me down. Yeah, so it's difficult. I don't think it's a clear answer, But I think you just have to be able to look back on your own behaviour and go, you know what? I think that was reasonable,
Mm.
But that kind of thing only really comes with age,
Mm-hmm. But
And-
if, again, without going into too many details, if you're comfortable, because you mentioned something serious that happened, even though it did not happen to you, but if you were in that situation,
Yeah.
if you were in the shoes of one or the other side, what would you say you think should have been done or can be done to prevent that, to resolve that? Because it's tricky and it's a thin ice when you're talking about that, I believe, because the general understanding that you just should be nice to each other, and that's
Yeah.
just how it should be. But at the same time, we're all people, and
Well, that's the thing. I mean, sometimes you do come across people who is just kind of awful. I mean, it's pretty rare, isn't it? Because like most people are all right, but every so often it's like, are you what? Are you kidding me? Like, what's wrong with you? So every so often that happens. That's happened to me relatively recently, and it was very difficult to deal with. But fortunately, everyone thought the same.
okay, so it's the common sense that defeated that. Basically.
Yeah, but it's kind of, it was difficult to not to take it personally. Every time I interacted with the person that I'm thinking about, I was like, this is entirely personal. You know, the usual narcissistic musician thing. Everything's about me, you know. Like, but it wasn't at all. It was just the person was.
Which is also a very common
strange.
thing, or common concern, how to not take work-related things personal.
Oh,
how
I
to
mean,
not
I
drag
haven't-
personal into professional
I'm
and vice
terrible
versa.
at that. I'm terrible at that. I don't have any answers.
You know, okay. But I mean, we and you talked about it. Would you just say that you just have a thicker skin and that's why you can't separate work from?
I can't separate work.
Oh,
from
you
anything.
can't?
No. It causes me all sorts of anxiety. But at the end of the day, the thing that I know, and I don't want this to come across wrong, 9 times out of 10, I've played guitar okay. You know, like it's usually all right. Like my musical output, and if I know that I haven't lost my temper with somebody and I've been a reasonable person, then I mean that's all you can do in life, isn't it? Is like try to be as reasonable as possible in any situation. You know? It's taken me until the last few years to work that out. I've done a lot of unreasonable things. Nothing terrible, but like, you know what I mean? You look back and you go, oh, I'm an idiot.
Well, you always
all
have
do
those
it.
kind of those moments. Yeah. When you think back to it,
absolutely.
like,
And playing music is an inherently emotional occupation. And musicians are, by their nature, emotional people. We're not sort of like sociopathic kind of hedge fund people, are we? You know, like robotic sort of. You know, we're not like that. We're all a bit. Wee.
Yeah.
So, trying to manage that on a tour is like all sorts can go wrong, can't it? Really, it frequently does. You know.
I think that's what Alex thinks of all the time. How to not kill me.
I don't blame him. Yeah.
That's the truth. I don't blame them. Like I feel like, you know, like I'm a musicians guy. I mean I love my musicians. We gotta stick with them together. I feel like they're gonna be the first to be like, nah, Shukhrat, get yourself separate green room. We don't want to hang out with you when it happens to.
I want to speak to Alex and his lovely hair. That's what.
Yeah.
Another thing that I personally wanted to ask you about. I mean, if you're not comfortable with naming the name of the school, because I know that you're doing it low key, but you are currently enrolled in.
Oh no, that's fine. I didn't
It's
mind.
fine. You're enrolled in the online Berkeley course.
Yeah.
And when you told me that, we had this conversation. We had the conversation about. To me, it sounded like ridiculous in a way. Like, why would someone like you need that? But I feel like another thing one of the things that I rarely hear or seen people of my age and experience ask people who are way up, you know, further down the line than, you know, like you, about the things like working on yourself, the progress. Like, you are not to, you know, just somewhat facts how we see you. You are well established within the industry. You're well established within the scene of different things, whether it's musical theater, whether it's film, touring. But you're still working yourself, and you're still trying to progress. You're still trying to develop yourself. And like I've seen you play when the pub gig that I mentioned, it was when you did it with teachers in the pub with the fusion. I was like, I was blown away completely. I was just like, that was one of the best things that pop has ever seen, I think. What drives you? What drives you still now?
Fear and insecurity. Terror.
I think we're gonna end here then.
Bankruptcy. I don't know, usual collection of negatives.
But you're doing the jazz program, right?
Yeah, I'm doing it. Well, so there was always been things about my playing over chord changes which I don't like. Like I found, you know, guitar players are like that. Like you end up playing like blues licks over places which are completely inappropriate. And I wanted to have a better fundamental knowledge of straight ahead jazz, like kind of bebop and the standards and things. I can get away. I can sound a bit jazzy. Sometimes I can get away with
Just
it.
roll that tone a little bit.
Well, quite, yeah. But I always knew. I know that I'm not. It's not the real thing. You know, like there's things that I'll come up against. I wish I could just had that bit of language or just sounded a bit legit. You know. So I just thought, right, what I'm going to do is start right at the beginning. It's the Berkeley call it the 101. It's like super basic, and I wanted a structured approach, because I mean the thing is, again, what we said about music, it's not like, you know, if you're teaching music, it's not like you've arrived. I'm a student.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's way more stuff that I don't know than I do know. You know, I mean, just I understand why when you're young it looks like people of a certain age and who have a decent CV look like they've got a handle on it. I get why it looks like that, but it doesn't feel like that. Like I don't think I probably feel much different to you. You know what I mean? Like, what's the next thing? I'm not looking at. I don't wake up in the morning and look at my CV and go, cracked it. That doesn't happen. I go, what's next? What can I learn? What can't I do? You know, what music do I want to learn that I don't know anything about? You know. Anyway, so I wanted to get my jazz playing together, but I also wanted to do it in a structured way. So the course is quite established, which I'm really enjoying it. I've got, and it was important to me as well to do it. And again, I don't want this to come across as arrogant, but I didn't want anyone knowing what I did for a living. So I didn't want my teachers to be maybe someone British who would know me. Yeah, you know what I mean? It would be like, it would be like, oh, I thought you were supposed to be good. What you do? How come you don't know this? Really,
well, that was kind of my reaction, but like,
well, exactly. Yeah, so I didn't want that. I wanted to feel free to make mistakes without worrying about, I guess, not my reputation, but like feeling awkward about. You know, I wanted to be like, well, I'm rubbish at this. I want to get better. So the guy his name's Bruce Saunders. I've never told him a thing about me, so I only know him over the internet.
At this point, does he know who you are or still no clue?
Well, he knows my name, so that's...
As in, like, know who you are, as in, like, what you do.
You mean what I do for a living? Nothing.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. How long have you been doing it for at this point?
About 10 weeks.
10 weeks.
I handed him my homework, he's like, yeah, it's really good. Like, I've got A's so far. So I don't know. Yeah, he's an older guy, so maybe he's... doesn't. I mean, he's really good teacher as well. But he doesn't take any shit off me, which I really like. He's like if I like say or do something which he doesn't like, he's like, Adam, that's not what we're talking about. You got the wrong. Don't do that. You got the wrong idea.
Is he like your typical New York jazzer, or
he kind of sounds a bit like that? Okay. Yeah, this guy, he talks very.
Yeah,
slowly.
they all talk like this, like basically.
Is that right?
Yeah.
He's like a kind of.
Well, there's a threshold. I mean, whenever I was there always been a threshold of, in a way, age, but mostly I think experience in New York, after which you go and you just like this. Because some younger guys, they're like they're quite energetic and stuff. Like, it's a funny story I always say. I had a privilege one time seeing Chris Potter in Village Vanguard with his trio. Crazy good, and you know, Chris Potter being one of my favorite current, you know, still active sax players. And he's like, well, he's the one that talks like that and like really quiet and calm. Then the next day or 2 days after, I went to see a great sax player that I highly recommend everyone to check out. His name is Lucas Pino. He's more of a younger guy. Yeah. He has one of his projects is called No Net.
Oh yeah, no net.
Yeah.
Oh, no net, no net.
No
oh,
net,
cool.
no.
Yeah. I get
and
it.
it's a really good guy. I was with my uncle, who's like not a musician. Like, he really loved it.
Right.
And he's more like that energetic guy. And I was like, that's my little theory, that after a certain year of overall living in New York and experiencing New York, you just go like, yeah, I've seen it all.
Is
like,
that? Yeah, it does come across like that.
It's like,
funny.
yeah, like,
I mean,
there isn't a jazz that I haven't seen.
Oh, that's so funny, because I thought it was just him, because like he's like I say, he's older than me. You know, I don't. He must be maybe 60 or something. I guess, but like, he's really good. Obviously, he's Berkeley jazz guitar teacher.
Yeah,
he really knows what he's doing, and he's very good at teaching. But he's like, there's got that sort of direct New Yorker thing.
Yeah,
he's like, Adam, that's not right.
Yeah, they don't care. They just say it.
Yeah, and it's like in Britain we might be like, so Should we
Yeah.
just try a little different?
Yeah, yeah.
Perhaps a little bit different.
Adam, that
Nah.
sucks.
Well, it's also much harder scene. Like when I got here and I started going to jams just to see what's going on, I was initially really disappointed because I'm used to those jams and those
Right.
are really intense. And it's like, okay, you get you get 2 courses, done. You wait for
Really?
3 hours. That's it.
I
You
never been
get-
to a jam session in my life.
It's like the
Oh.
New York jams. It's like you stand there in like a jazz, like you let's say you're in Smalls, for example, a really famous jazz club. You
Yeah.
there whole night. I don't know how many exactly jazz schools in New York at the moment. A lot. And imagine like you have 4 or 5 clubs that do jams certain days, but funny enough, oftentimes on the same day, and you have same group of people just traveling because all you get is 2 choruses.
What is this in any way enjoyable? Doesn't
It's-
sound it.
It's enjoyable. It's not enjoyable in a way of like expressing yourself. It's enjoyable as in an educational way
Is it?
because you
It
actually
sounds
learn.
terrible.
It is. It's really strict. It's really like hard on you. But there are also reason why like best straight ahead jazz musicians are in New York still and from New York.
Yeah.
It's something like that. It's just a different environment there. Where
Yeah.
here you just like everyone's like nice and friendly. You playing gazillion courses, go for it. We're playing just like another thing is that was really weird to me here is just like let's vamp over A minor. Never happens there.
Is that it's
Call
always
the tune.
changes?
Call the tune. What we're playing. What's the head?
Yeah.
When at the end we cannot because here is just like let's just vibe. Let's have a good time. It's really different.
Yeah, I wanted to be able to hang a little bit on that kind of
Yeah.
that's cool
But-
tune. I mean, well, I've almost finished the basic course, and now I'm going to move on to the advanced course. So
Okay.
I'm looking forward
Okay.
to that.
How many courses are there? Total
I
like
think it's
levels.
just 2.
Just 2.
Yeah, it's just 2. Yeah.
Interesting. Well,
But there's a lot of material in that.
well, I'm pretty sure it is.
Yeah, yeah.
'Cause,
So yeah,
obviously, it's not the same as their 4-year degree, but at the same time,
no, there is.
very
I think
informative.
that it's incredibly informative.
Okay.
It's really all the basic, all the basic of language and transcribing the greats.
What was the last thing you played on the?
Well, this week we're doing pentatonics.
Oh, so it's that
Yeah.
basic.
No, not just like the one pentatonic scale, but like kind of the Brecker. sort
Oh,
of.
Brecker.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, exactly, and like using pentatonics in different.
Okay.
Yeah,
As
not,
like-
not,
okay,
I know, I
fair.
know, I can play
That's-
it.
yeah, you're a guitarist. You should be good at pentatonics.
Yeah, I'm alright with
That's
that, yeah.
the first thing you learn.
But using them like different pentatonics over different, and then we'll just use them in different environments. But no, it is the basic course. So I wanted to start from the beginning, and the thing is, I was right actually. So there's a lot of it which I'm going, yeah, I know all this, you know what I mean, which is fine,
Yeah.
but I signed up for that. But then every so often there'll be something super basic which I've missed, and I've gone, that's it.
Right.
That's the thing I don't know,
Okay.
that's why I started at the basic one.
Yeah. Okay. So you don't like. Would you say you need some sort of foundation to go into? Well, you
I
should
think
have
with
some.
jazz. You have to sound in any way legitimate, and again, I hate to.
No, the straight ahead, especially. Yeah.
Yeah, straight ahead. You need the language. You need to learn the language to
Yeah.
play straight ahead jazz.
Yeah.
Which I don't really have, and it's obvious. You can smell it when people can't do it. You know?
Yeah. It's hard to fake it. I remember
Yeah.
my high school jazz department chair. He wasn't really hard. He was really lovely guy. He's a really lovely guy. Marshall Hawkins, great bass player. He used to play with Miles Davis.
Oh, I've heard of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like up and coming trumpet player. Used to be. He was really like one of the things about the lingo and the feel. He was really precise, even with the way we play the way we played heads.
Yeah, they are quite precise. I didn't
Yes.
see that one coming actually.
It's really because
Quite dogmatic.
that what establishes the feel of the song. Because like there's a standard, there will never be another you.
Yeah,
And I remember when somebody called it in class, and I was feeling really like floaty that day particularly, and I just started stretching out the melody a little bit. He just stopped. Nope, and then he started break by break explaining why the melody should be played by because there's a bass.
What you
Bass has to interact with
Okay.
that. If you start stretching out the time too much,
really?
because it's mid to upbeat up tempo
So you can't
swing.
If
If you do if you do it in a slower tempo, yeah. But if it's somewhat original tempo, the drummer is just like you're just losing that feel. The jazz pocket gone,
all right,
just gone.
That's
And there,
interesting.
that's what that I think peaks for the jazz being like, if it's the hat that we're going over in so many so much detail,
Yeah.
and like, you know, then
I have noticed the difference because I did a jazz postgrad at the Royal Academy, but it was very European. It was we did a lot of like Kenny Wheeler stuff,
okay.
which I loved. It was amazing, but we didn't do a lot straight ahead. But I've noticed the difference in the way that it's taught. With the Americans, it's like, this is our tradition. You
Yeah.
will do it like this.
Yeah,
Like,
100%.
it's not something I've come across before. It's quite prescriptive.
Yes.
And actually, what if you stopped your layperson in the street and said, "What's jazz about?" and they'd probably say, "We just make it up, don't you?" You know what I mean? And,
Yeah.
and actually, the way that I'm being taught currently at Berkeley is the complete opposite of that. It's very much more like the American classical music. That's
Yes,
how it
it
feels
is.
to me.
It is.
Again, I hate to say, like, not a jazz musician. I don't want to say that, you know,
Yeah.
I don't want to. This is just my random opinion on, you know, what I've worked on recently. But like, it's incredibly prescriptive.
It
And
is.
Here is our language.
It is.
You will learn it like
I
this.
feel like someone like Wynton Marsalis is a great example of that.
Yeah, quite possibly. Yeah, with
Because
the
he's
historic.
like, exactly, especially him being from New Orleans and his whole family being from there. It's like and they're really proud of that. And I feel like it's a in a way good thing to go
I
through
mean,
in
it
your
is-
life.
It's
It's
their
helpful.
classical music, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
It's like the way that in the classical music colleges here, we, you know, teach, you know, like, say cellists will do the Bach cello suites or whatever.
Mhm.
They are teaching jazz in the same way. That's what
Yeah.
it feels like to me. And they're like,
Yeah.
that. And my teacher is like, if I'm doing something wrong, he's like, no, that's not jazz. And I'm like, well, it feels good. It's like, no, it's not jazz. I remember very
Wow.
early on, I quibbled something. I was like, why are you using this scale over there? It doesn't sound good. Right. And we had this back and forth thing. And he sort of, I got the impression that I pissed him off,
Mm.
to be honest. And he said, who did he say? He came up with someone. It was like not McCoy Tarnett.
Is it keys player?
Yeah, I think it was.
The
Some
11s?
really big,
Win-
it
Wynton
doesn't
Kelly?
even matter, but some really big big name in jazz. And he said, well, it was okay for them, but you can play whatever you want. And I was like,
What
And it
scale
was-
was that?
I can't remember what we were talking about. It was something like, the use of a Dorian scale over a certain progression. I can't remember the technicalities of it, but it was like,
Yeah.
but like I'd stepped on the tradition, like I'd messed with something which wasn't
Yeah,
mine to mess
yeah.
with. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And I didn't mean it like that, but I was like, it made me think. I was like, oh right, okay, this is like hallowed ground. I don't feel that you want me to express an opinion here. It's
Right,
like,
yeah.
this is what we're going to teach you. You're going to learn it. Shut the
Yeah.
fuck up.
Yeah, fair. Well, before we finished, and because you already mentioned the looking ahead into the future,
Yeah.
as someone who has been, as you said, doing this for like 30 years
Mm.
as a guitarist, you've seen a bit of a geeky thing. You've seen all possible equipment. You've seen so much. You've seen so many things. I personally do know that you do both. You go old school way sometimes. You use your fractal when it's the modeling, the digital stuff. But I'm a notorious on this thing for being pro analog.
We have an
Yeah,
ongoing
little
feud
banter.
of like I'm more digital, he's more
Right.
analog.
So, as someone who's witnessed the transition and everything, how do you go these days? Because about the equipment, and what would you say your natural instincts would be when it comes to different type of gigs?
It totally depends on the gig. Like, if I'm going to do a film, I take an app.
Mm-hmm.
I also think it depends to a large extent on the studio that you're in. So if you're talking about recording, like, so if I record at home, I've got a Fractal FM9, which for my money is way better than a Kemper.
I agree. I personally would agree.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot more. The learning curve is a lot steeper. You have to. It's like you need a pilot's license to actually do an internet course on how to work it. But I put a lot of time in. I think it feels great.
And fractals are really good.
It's really good. So-
Fractals and quads, in my opinion, probably the best.
Yeah, I've never
right
owned a quad, but yeah, I agree from what I've heard. Kemper's all right. It's a bit small, a bit compressed, I think.
And it seems like Campers is mainly about amps rather than multi effects and so forth and so on.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. But my point being is that me plugging my Kemper into my recording interface, sorry, not my Kemper, my Fractal into recording interface at home, That is going to sound better than me, a not professional engineer, miking up an amp.
Okay.
Right.
Or using the universal audio plugins, which are really great.
Okay.
Try
Yeah.
them for they're really good as well.
Right.
They have amp plugins.
Have you tried the neural DSP plugins?
No, but I don't need to. The UA
Cool.
ones are better. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I think so.
Ooh, I
Everyone
might
has-
have to
Actually,
convert
I,
then.
would, I mean, if you can,
Might
I
have
would
to
suggest.
convert.
I would suggest.
Well, I got enough. Of
He
that
he turned me on those. Like actually, he did. Like like for example, Matteo Sasato. I have the entire Matteo Sasato suite.
stuff. Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, the tech's got so good these days.
Yeah,
but anyway,
yeah.
my point being is that if you've got an amateur engineer in a home studio,
Yeah.
like me in my home studio, the FM9 is better, or your Kemper is better, or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I don't. It's a room very much like the one we're in at the moment. My studio, it's got some gear in it. It's not an amazing sounding room. If you're in Abbey Road 1,
Yeah.
that is an spectacular sounding room. So I'm going to bring my 2-rock amp, which is my
Is that your go-to?
That's my go-to. My 2-rock.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
I usually get my drive from pedals. Well, I know
Mm.
that's just a preference, but so if there's like serious engineers in the serious studio, I'll bring my amp. If it's any other situation or live, mostly unless it's a gig in a bar, I'll use an amp because you want to feel it.
Yeah.
But if everyone's on in-ears in a big theater, just use the
It doesn't
FM9.
really matter
No,
anyway
man,
because
it's cool.
yeah.
I mean, if it was like a blues gig or something, I want an amp. I want to feel it. You know,
Maybe,
Yeah.
yeah.
like. But pop gigs, like my Beverly Night gig, FM9 all the way. It's
Yeah.
great. It's great.
Mm.
You know, got all the effects, all the reverbs, everything set up. It's absolutely fantastic. Because they used to be terrible. All those things, like the first line 6 pod, the kidney bean thing. I mean, they were so bad.
Yeah.
You know, like you just play it, and it's always more about the feel. Really, they didn't feel any good. You know, there was no air, there was no vibe.
Mm.
You don't get anything back. There's no squish. I mean,
Yeah.
it's terrible just repeating the word vibe, but that's what it is. you know,
Yeah.
like, so the amps were always better, but now with in-ears and the technology's got so good that actually it's the first thing that I've bought, which I feel comfortable with, is the Fractal. Like Kempers were pretty good, but
Were you on Kemper before? Have you tried it?
no,
or-
I was like, no, I'd rather
Okay.
bring the amp.
Okay.
But I got the Fractal and I was like, I think they've got
What
it.
about guitars?
I've got loads of them. I don't.
Of course you do.
So you've been playing
It'd be weird if-
surf or
I really
quite
like certain
lately.
guitars,
Quite
actually.
lately,
yeah.
Yeah, I've got a couple of vintage guitars. So I've got 1967 Gibson 335 and a 64 Strat, which was sort of. I always take those because they are what they are. But
Yeah.
modern guitars, like I don't want a modern Fender or Gibson, to be honest. I think
yeah.
no,
No,
thanks.
that's,
and I can't blame you for that.
No,
Yeah, no.
they don't care. You know, big corporations, they're not interested. You know, like, but Sir, I've found really make some great guitars,
Yeah.
and I like the modern conveniences, the stainless steel frets, the compound radius,
Yeah.
like the convenience. They got that go-to 2-point trem. You know, I just really like, and they're vibey and they're nice. You know,
You have the HSS, right?
I've
Strat.
got a few. I've got an HSS Strat on my show on Style Express. I've got a 3 single coil Strat, which I take on sessions instead of my 64 because it's not noisy. It's got a silent single coil. And
Right, yeah.
you can't. I mean, the 64 does have a thing, but
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
grand scheme of things, you're not going to hear it.
Yeah.
You know. So I take the Sur single coil Strat, and I've also got they call it a Modern Plus. I think it's
The
an
HH.
HSH.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Which is a fantastic guitar. It's great. You can get great in-between Strat sounds. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Sir. I've also got a PRS McCarthy, which is like a Les Paul but better.
Yeah.
Stays in tune. So yeah, the Sir for the most part, what I play, and then I've got the PRS for the Les Paul thing, and then my old Fender and Gibsons for. You know, if you need a vintage.
Well, amp
sound.
wise, you
Right,
said
right.
Yeah, with 2-rock, I'm pretty happy with that. I've
Mhm.
got a few other things. I've got Fenders and
Oh, yeah. Just
bits
like
and
standard stuff.
yeah, those standard repertoire amps. But to be honest, the 2-rock does great, and I've got loads of pedals, and I can usually get the
Yeah.
sounds that I want out of those. You know, so yeah.
So for the live gigs then you for Beverly Night you just bring the Fractal. You don't
Yeah.
have any extra pedals.
No.
Don't, like do you expression?
Oh
Do
yeah,
you
there's,
need-
there's
you
2
have a-
expression pedals, so one's
Okay.
a wire and one's a volume.
Yeah. Okay. Nice.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice, yeah.
But yeah, for her gig, I just use the FM9.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
And I've run it by all the sound engineers. They're top. She has top sound engineers, top monitor guys, and they're all
Sure.
like, yeah, it sounds wicked.
Yeah.
I was like, be brutal with me. I'm going to send you. I want you to tell me if this needs working on. I put a lot of effort into it. I did this. There's a guy called Cooper Carter. He's an American guy who does a course on the fractal, and you can buy it for like $100. And I sat there like a geek, going through it, learning how to do it, how to set up amps that sound and feel good. Took me a long time. I did it. Here we are. And so I pretty much got my presets, and they go wherever I go.
Nice, yeah.
Well, I asked you today, but I'm gonna ask again: stereo or mono for her gigs?
For her gigs, I think it comes out stereo, but the guitar
because of
signal
the-
itself is
Well, of course,
mono.
Yeah.
So it's one amp. I haven't doubled the amp, but I just for one thing I use the impression of a Dumble, whatever it is.
Okay.
That's the sound that I hear because Larry Carlton and Robin Ford.
Okay.
That's the sound that I hear in my head.
Fair.
And then but I think some of the delays and the effects come out in stereo, so I give them 2 XLRs. But I've got it set up so my out 1 is in stereo, and my out 2 is in mono if I want to send it to a response monitor, flat response monitor.
Perfect. Well,
And do you have any like go-to amps, the modelers on the fractal that you?
Yeah, it's the Dumble thing. I can't remember what they call
Dumble,
it. I bought some presets off a guy called Austin Buddy.
Okay.
He's like the who's the Kemper guy? Michael Britt. Austin Buddy is like the Michael Britt.
Okay.
He's like the guy everyone buys his presets there.
Yeah.
But I bought them and then I tweaked them to make what I sound. And there's hundreds. There's like the Marshalls and the Fenders and the Voxes,
Yeah.
the usual array of stuff. I like the sound I hear in my head I think is from listening to Larry Carlton in the 80s. On that album Last Night. That's when I hear guitar. I'm like, that's the sound that I
that's your go-to sound.
Yeah, it sort of is. Yeah, I like it. So that's the sound that I try and make. So that impression of a Dumble. I haven't got a real Dumble, obviously, so I don't actually really. Yeah, who knows?
I don't think I've ever met anyone who was even close to owning a Dumble in there.
I know someone who's got one, but and it's the same guy that's got the real 59 Les Paul.
Well, it makes sense.
And he's not a professional musician.
Well, that also makes sense. That makes even more sense.
Of course.
Interestingly, I'll tell you what he did. It's quite cool. He invented, you see coloured contact lenses.
Yeah.
In movies and stuff.
Yeah.
If somebody needs red light, he invented those. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, Alex, me and you doing our own thing. In order to own good guitars, me and you need to start this.
You need to invent. Yeah.
Well, Adam, thank you very much. Just the last request for our viewers, if last few words of wisdom to share, whatever is in your head or heart.
I'm going to tell you. Okay, I got something for you. So when I was doing The Voice, the series 1, I had this yellow Telecaster, right? And it said, I had the letters. We did a lot of live broadcasts, but it said DFIU on the top, which that came from when I got my first professional gig. Well, first I was playing with some grown-ups, in the last minute. So this band leader called Pete Long used to run a band. I was about 20. I was in National Youth Jazz Orchestra, and he came up to me before the gig. I was super nervous. It was like a big concert hall in Spain. He said, "Adam, whatever you do, don't fuck it up." So it just said, "Don't fuck it up" on the top of my guitar. So that would be my advice.
Well, you heard it from the man
Wise
himself,
words to bring with you.
Adam Goldsmith. Adam, again, thank you very much.
Thank
for
you so
doing
much.
This.
It's been lovely.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been lovely.
Thank you,
And
chaps.
all the viewers, all Adam's information going to be down in the description. Please go follow, watch, learn about this man because he has a lot to share. And trust me, you're not going to ever regret learning more about Adam. Adam, this one goes to you and to our wonderful viewers. Thank you very much. Thank you guys for being here. See you in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.